Welcome to The Screen Queen, the show where I'll be talking about your favorite show or your favorite movie. You'll just have to find out what you're about to know. This is your Screen Queen, your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there, and welcome back to the show. This is your subscription for free fiction, your Screen Queen, Samantha Parrish. Well, I miss Ray Liotta. I've talked about Ray Liotta on the show and how much I miss him and how he really brought so much layers to all of his character. A 7-layer dip isn't even enough layers to what Ray Liotta gave to all of these characters, whether he was a good fella, whether he was a bad fella, whether he was some guy named Big Papa on the Muppets. He gave a unique, one-of-a-kind performance that cannot be replicated. Everything he's ever been and has his staple of his style. And when I found No Escape on Tubi, I'm like, okay, well, it's got Ray Liotta in it. What more could I ask for? Well, I got a lot more from this movie than I asked for. When I read the plot for No Escape on Tubi, with it being an action sci-fi movie, I was intrigued, even though I was a little bit skeptic. I've mentioned before on the show that sci-fi is not particularly my go-to genre, but it's Ray Liotta. I'm gonna take what I can get. And when I watched No Escape, I was very surprised for a film that looks very hammy and could have been very hammy, was not very hammy. Sci-fi movies of the 90s really do kind of feel like a hit and miss, whether they're going to be over the top like The Fifth Element, or they're going to be a little underwhelming like Free Jack. It was a bit of a experimentation time to depict what the future is going to be like, and I have to give credit where credit's due. No Escape did not bite off more than they could chew, and they really thrived off of the simplicity to drive the sci-fi story, which is kind of rare because usually sci-fi stories have to have so much emphasis. Like, it has to look like Blade Runner sneezed on it, so you could be able to get some of the stuff that we wouldn't fathom, but we could see in a believable future. And No Escape does have something, considering it's a movie that takes place in 2022. I mean, obviously we don't have the system that No Escape has, but gotta give credit where credit's due. It does seem very believable. And the stuff that I've seen in the movie over and over and over again truly does feel like I'm watching it for the first time. And this film isn't really well known, and well, now I have an opportunity to see if I can be able to blow this film up a little bit higher and give Ray Liotta one more credit for a movie he deserves credit for. So, strap ourselves in for an alternative timeline to 2022. Let's get into No Escape. So, for my listeners out there, before we get into this film, there's something I have to address. There are multiple titles called No Escape as to why the title of this episode says 1994. I thought that was very imperative to mention that so everyone's not looking through like, what the hell is she talking about? There are too many titles called No Escape. If you see a dude with a gun and Ernie Hudson and Kevin Dillon, you found it. So now that you know what specific No Escape you're looking for, I'm about to tell you what this movie is about. The world building behind No Escape is very good. And like I said, that's coming from someone that doesn't particularly get behind sci-fi, mostly because the world building can be a little bit tough for me to follow. And they really do hand you all of the stuff of this film so you can follow along. It kind of feels like an intense version of Blue's Clues, and you have everything you need to know to find out what you're going through in the entire film. You follow a guy named Robbins, who just blew away his high commanding officer in broad daylight. He, along with several other criminals, are going to be placed on an island called Absalom. And even though we haven't seen this place yet, judging by the reactions of the other inmates, this isn't going to be a pretty island. This is not going to be like Gilligan's Island. No, sorry, pup. When Robbins is transported, he ends up finding out what really goes on the island. That there are two tribes called the Insiders and the Outsiders. The Insiders are your good guys. The Outsiders are your bad guys. And you sort of see the trials and tribulations that Robbins has to go through while he's trying to survive on an island that he's trying to escape. I mean, The movie is called No Escape, so, you kind of have a feeling, there's a good chance he's probably going to escape, but you gotta see how this happens. With the way that we're introduced to Ray Liotta, he doesn't look like an action hero, but I buy him as an action hero. He did mention that this was his only chance to finally get to play an action hero, and they did a pretty good damn job with him. With the way that we've seen him in things like Unlawful Entry, Goodfellas, Field of Dreams, Something Wild. Well, 3 of those movies where he played bad guys, but bad guys that took no shit. You can definitely buy him in this movie, but you know for certain that the way that he doesn't take shit from no one is not out of malice, it's out of protecting his honor. There's so much to learn about his character that really does drive him, that you're rooting for him to not just beat up the bad guys, blow things up, and save the day, but you want to learn more about him. I've said in many other crime movies that if you do want to see someone save the day, you gotta get to know your hero. And you do get to know him pretty quick just from the actions he does in the first 10 minutes of the film. But with the way that he brought so much intelligence to his roles, he was able to play an action hero. I firmly believe that no matter what body type you look like, you can play an action hero depending on what character you're playing, and that can sort of hold on to the strengths for the character to get out of certain situations, kind of like, brain over brawn. And you definitely do see how his character, Robbins, is able to survive in a world purely because of survival instinct. Knowing how tough Robbins is, it really does prepare us to wonder if he's going to be tough enough to survive Absalom. To sum up what Absalom is that it makes Alcatraz look like Sesame Street. And we follow what Robbins is getting into when he sees the other tribes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and transition this part of the episode to talk about the characters because, my god, this cast is amazing. All the characters are great. Now, when it comes to an ensemble for a sci-fi movie, I don't know much about it because your girl doesn't really dig sci-fi movies, but there is a bit of a checklist to go through. That you want to make sure that all of your characters are established and don't feel cliched or underwhelming, or they're just kind of shoehorned in there as a makeshift character for what you need in this certain situation. It could have been so easy to just write these characters as their occupation and not know anything about them, but you truly got to know each and every one of their stories. And I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free because this is truly a film to experience. It is such a buried gem. And they couldn't have chosen a better cast. You have Ray Liotta, obviously, as I've been mentioning him so much. And then there's Lance Henriksen, Ernie Hudson, Stuart Wilson, and Kevin Dillon waiting for his entourage. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to make that joke. Lance Henriksen plays the father. Basically the leader of the Insiders. This is a man that knows exactly what he's doing. Of many characters that I have seen, or you've seen, that you can have an actor playing a character in charge and just go, okay, well, that's all I need to know. No, there is a lot more to his character that truly makes him feel fleshed out in this world, that you do believe he is the leader of this colony that is just trying to live to see tomorrow. He wants everyone to be safe. He wants everyone to make their contribution. He does have a very good leadership quality in this, which makes him great. He doesn't look like he's overwrought with power, but he's got to play his cards right. And then there's Hawkins, played by Ernie Hudson. And as much as, I love Ernie Hudson, he's the go-to guy for so many things, whether they're great things like Ghostbusters or terrible things like Dragon Ball Evolution. But this man gives so much into a performance and it feels very fleshed out. Ernie Hudson does not get enough credit for these minute roles that he does, and he does need to get a little bit more credit. He gives a very good spot-on performance where I fully believe that he is the right-hand man. The way he plays his character as the eyes and ears of the father, and you can truly tell that he does love this place that he's at because of the way that he has made this place safe. So for someone like Robbins to come along, he's like, hey, you might make this place unsafe, or I work so damn hard to make it safe. He feels like a stick in the mud character, but you know why he's a stick in the mud. that he has concrete reasons that his emotions are valid for why he has to take things a little bit further to not trust the newcomer. Especially where you see the way the law of the jungle goes, he ain't taking any chances. And then there's Casey. Personally, Casey is one of the best parts of the movie. Here's why. Casey has this naivete thing to him that makes him feel like the innocent part of this movie. Take something like Aliens, for instance, when you see the character Newt and how she interacts with Ripley or the other people a part of Ripley's team, that it kind of offers this moment to breathe, that you see a wholesome part of the world, and that you also get to see the other characters soften up just a little bit. It could have been easy to make Casey just a character that, like, has this Mary Sue type of quality to him, but no. He's not wet behind the ears, but there's something about him that does show he's not ready for the fight. There's a lot of tenacity and admiration and hope in a character like Casey, especially when you're in a place that feels hopeless. He is this, amount of serotonin to keep everything going. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that was pretty cool. Casey is truly one of the standout characters for me, solely with the way that he reacts to Robbins. He doesn't push his buttons. He knows how to take a cue. He might not get it every time, but that's what makes him very innocent, and it's what makes him very humane in an island that doesn't have much humanity on it. And if you do decide to take a chance on the film, I highly encourage those out there to take notice of the micro expressions between Casey and Robbins, with the way that they are figuring the other guy out solely through non-verbal expressions. And it really does drive the film to see their growing friendship, with the way that Robbins is kind of smirking but holding himself back because the man's got a lot of shit in his mind. Same thing with Casey, where he just feels very in tune and empathetic with everything going on. And then there's Merrick. Honestly, I haven't had this much fun with a bad guy since Hans Gruber from Die Hard. And that's a high praise coming from someone like me. The thing that Stuart Wilson gives into the performance for Merrick is just not going to be breaking the bank, but he still gave 110% into making this bad guy seem believable and given these certain layers. It could have been easy to make Merrick just a one-note villain that all he wants is power, and yes, he does want power. But with the way that he's fucking with everything around him, he does want to take the insider's tribe. And when Robbins comes along, he's like, oh, there's a new prospect for a game here. No matter what, everything is fair game to him. It's the law of the jungle, and he's taken full advantage of it. But the way that Stuart Wilson plays this character with so much charisma, like I could see the charisma dripping from my TV screen. I'm going to call Oxford Dictionary and tell them that they have to remove the entire text definition of charisma and just put a picture of Stuart Wilson from this movie. That's how wild he plays this character. But also, one more thing that I noticed, and I can't get it out of my mind, is the fact that Stuart Wilson sounds so much like George Carlin in this film. Like, if you were to compare a clip from George Carlin's stand-up and then have that side by side with a clip from No Escape, it doesn't feel any different. I don't know why, but if you're gonna watch this movie, please keep that in mind and have so much fun with it like I did. So now I feel like I'm obliged to have to rephrase his character name to just call him Evil George Carlin. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. But with a great cast of good guys, bad guys. The one thing that I have to say about this film is the fact that it kind of feels like a sci-fi Shawshank Redemption. And I find so much irony in that. Well, there's a lot of irony in this film that I'll be getting into later on. But I call it the sci-fi Shawshank Redemption because it has the same feeling like when you would watch the Shawshank Redemption. Like, it's up to you to find out if you believe Andy Dufresne. It's left up to you. Just like how you watch all these characters and deem, do you deserve to be on an island that you are basically going to be here until your untimely demise. And with the way that we don't know too much about these characters quite yet, it leaves that room open for us to decide that for ourselves. Just like, I've watched this film so many times, and I still have to go through and see if there's anything that I missed to know, okay, is this going to change the way I feel about this character to know if they deserve to be here or not? It really does feel like once you watch it one time, you can watch it again and get to learn something new. It might just be me, but I do want to hammer that in there. I'm trying whatever I can to see if I can pump this movie up, because there's a lot more in here. It does not deserve that 6.1 rating on IMDb. With the way that this film just kind of feels like any other sci-fi movie, it doesn't really feel like any other sci-fi movie, with all these great performances that all of the actors give and the questions that you give yourself. But there is one standout part of this film that I am going to give a spotlight to. And I have mentioned this scene to a lot of my friends whenever I talk about No Escape. There is a scene in here that is one of the most dramatic moments, and it's a moment where you just sit with the character. Now, before I get into talking about this scene, I feel like it would be in everyone's best interest that I give a warning that this is going to be talking about PTSD. I don't know who is out there that's dealing with something, but, I care about you guys, and I care about your mental health. And with what I'm about to talk about, I don't want to take any chances to not, let everyone know. So now that you know, I'm going to put the timestamp in there to skip on ahead. Okay, let's get into it. So, around the middle marker of the movie, after the outsiders have attacked the insiders, because, movie's gonna movie, and you're gonna have a peaceful place under attack, and the insiders are just trying to pick up again and bury the ones that they've lost, and try to rebuild. And they have a cremation ceremony for the ones that died from the attack. And then it cuts over to Robbins, who is seeing the whole cremation ceremony, and he is visibly shaking, and it's looking like whatever he's going through is not good. And the next thing is these sounds of screaming and fire burning, and every time we cut back to Robbins, he's just shaking more and more and more. That we're now introduced to why he keeps himself on guard. Why he's not very talkative, because he has a hell in his mind. This is what's been going on the entire time, and that's basically what PTSD is. It's something that you can't really see, but it does depict what that moment feels like, where it hits at the times you least expect it, depending on what the trigger is. And for a movie like No Escape, being smack dab in the middle of the 90s, to be another film to depict PTSD, I gotta give that credit that it might not have gone certain places, but now there's another example of what PTSD looks like. I've talked about PTSD before in the show, and I've talked about it with First Blood, with how Rambo says, you just don't turn it off, which is true. And you can see that with Robbins and No Escape. He can't turn it off. Same thing with another film I covered, In the Line of Fire, where Clint Eastwood's partner, Al, has been trying to get help and just can't find therapy that can be able to help him out, because mental health is not a one-size-fits-all. There's another film I was watching the other day called Born on the 4th of July, where you see Tom Cruise's character just kind of hollow in on himself as he's going through the motions of the traumatic stuff he's seen in Vietnam. And then you have this film, No Escape, where it's another one that you know exactly what he's going through and what he's feeling like, and that you just kind of sit with him as he's working through his trauma. It's not the best, but it's a moment where you just have to sit with it. And I say that from experience, where there are times my PTSD gets to me and I just have to sit there and just kind of hold on the sides of the boat and just ride it out. Sometimes I get emotions, sometimes I don't, because you never know what PTSD is going to do. And there are other evidential parts of this film where you do see what happens more with Robin's PTSD, and there are times he runs away, he just cannot talk about it, and that's really what it comes down to. It's hard to talk about the hell in your mind. That scene is the reason I pushed this film so much. That was the standout moment for me, that it wanted to depict something that people weren't talking about as much. Whereas today, mental health is a hot topic now, and it's not being shied away from. It's not being shut out. But still, having a moment like that exist in the 90s where it just kind of fell into the abyss of that decade, and to now be slowly resurfaced, now there's an example people can see that it's been talked about in a decade that wasn't being talked about quite yet. And the way that Ray Liotta gives all of those heartbreaking mannerisms, from like just tears that he couldn't control and the shaking and hyperventilating, he really gave every single aspect of what a PTSD episode looks like. I mean, God, he really did so much for this character. After watching this movie many, many times, there's something that stuck out to me immediately, and this is the other piece of irony that I want to talk about. So, I've mentioned that this film takes place in a fictional version of 2022. And the irony that Ray Liotta would eventually die in the year 2022. And this has been hammered into a lot of the trivia that you see on IMDb, where they're like, oh, it takes place in 2022. It's also the year Ray Liotta died. Like, yes, I know, I get it. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you so much. But damn it, it kind of hurts a little bit. It's like one of those like Simpsons factor where like the Simpsons predicted the future, and then they have this happen. Like, oh no, I'm gonna start paying close and personal attention to some of the more sci-fi movies if it's something like, I don't know, 2042, and there's a certain actor in there. I'd be like, hey, keep an eye on that year. Look what happened to Ray Liotta. No Escape. He died in the year that he was in that fictional year. Take care of yourself, pal. I don't know how many of my listeners out there really can get behind the coincidental irony things that someone ends up dying in the year that is in the future and it just happened to come into place, but still it is such awful irony. So the last thing that I want to mention about this film is it does feel like a James Cameron movie without James Cameron. I mean, if you were to go on Wikipedia, there is no like correlation to James Cameron. He had no part of this movie. But he kind of does from the people that were associated with James Cameron. Like, it kind of feels like a stretch. There's something that you can clearly see in the movie and something you can't see in the movie. And I'm going to start to tell you the one that you can't see in the movie, but it'll definitely kind of cue you in on this. The producer for the film is a woman named Gail Ann Hurd. And if you've never heard of her before, no pun on her name, she was the wife of James Cameron. And when they worked together, she was the go-to for a lot of the films. They're like, okay, if this person can't do it, Gail can do it. The woman can get shit done. And even though she departed ways from James Cameron, she still had her pick in some of the projects. That shows how much power she has and how much she was respected, still is respected for what she does for the movie industry. But then there's the second half of this James Cameron reference of a tie-in where Lance Henriksen has worked with James Cameron on multiple projects between Terminator, and he was also in Aliens, and I'm sure he's been in other stuff because it's what you do with Lance Henriksen. He is the man that can do everything. But in a way, it kind of makes me laugh. Just to imagine him on set, he's like, I went from being a robot and being in the Terminator, and here I am, fighting on this stupid island. I was the Terminator once upon a time. There would be no Terminator if it wasn't for me. I don't know if he said that, but I like to imagine that he did with his whole history of what he's done in these movies. So it is a little bit weird to look at this film, and I mention that because there's so many relevant factors into a film that's not relevant, but in a way, those tie-ins do make it relevant for how much of a stretch that it's tied to a lot of people that believe in this project. It's a film that fell into the 90s, and I'm hoping with this episode that I could be able to push it a little bit out of the abyss for so much that this film has to offer. Like I said, it could have been easy to make this a hammy film, but there's nothing hammy about this. It's a solid sci-fi film. It's sci-fi I can get behind, and it's a sci-fi film for those out there that are like, well, I want to find a sci-fi movie, but I want something that's digestible. This is one of those films that does a great job to not overtax you on the sci-fi elements where you just have the bare bone stuff for making this feel like a dystopian society and a future, and that everyone feeds into this story. You really do believe that there is an island called Absalom where it's kill or be killed, and you want to see the survival of these characters. There's so much layers to everybody that drives it. If you look at something like The 100 or Revolution, that is also a sci-fi world that's built off of a way that people have had to adapt to a new surrounding. No Escape is definitely one of those earlier examples before we had stuff like The 100 or Revolution to see what people can do in a surroundings of kill or be killed and thinking on their feet and wanting the survival for each other and seeing the community. It's really what makes this film so great and makes it stand out. And I hope in the future that there is going to be a future for No Escape because, well, whether we like it or not, I don't think we're going to be escaping from No Escape anytime soon. I mean, you mind appearing this film a couple more times on the show. And with that said, that is a wrap on No Escape. Thank you so much to all my listeners out there that have stayed with me for so long and have been pushing the show to other people and helping the show grow. You have no idea how much that means to me that every week that I put out these podcast episodes, that there are people out there that care about the show as much as I do. And it means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. So before we find out what the next episode is going to be on the Screen Queen, I do have an announcement for the summer schedule on the show. So with summer coming up, you get your sunscreen, you get your bathing suits, you play Don Henley's Boys of Summer, and your girls got some stuff going on this summer. I'm going to be heading to an event that I'll be showcasing my book series Inglorious Inc. I also have some trips I'm planning with my pals. And so when I was looking at my summer plans, like, what about the show? What's going to happen with that? And I have found a way that I can be able to put out the episodes that works with my hectic summer schedule. So here's how it's going to go. I am taking the last week off of every month of the summer. You will still be having episodes that come out every Sunday, and I'll be working more on trailer time, but that gives me a little bit of a break in the summer that I can be able to get to have time to prepare for all this stuff that I have going on. But that also counts it for this month too, where I have some pre-planned stuff going on for Memorial Day, so there will not be a new episode of The Screen Queen at the end of May. Sorry to hit you with this surprise plot twist, but figured you should know now than to wonder what's going to happen next Sunday. So, thank you to those out there that are very understanding to what I do for the show and the stuff I do outside of the show. It means a lot to me. And with all that mentioned, it is time to find out what the next episode is going to be on The Screen Queen when I return in June. Alrighty, here we go. Let me get my suggestions mixed up here. There's some new stuff in here, so this is going to be it's going to be intense to find out what I put in here. Oh, some just fell. That's okay. Okay, what are you? Tell me. Okay. Oh, wow. That's going to be a hell of a thing. That's going to be, wow. I hold a heavy piece of paper in my hand, guys. So the next episode on The Screen Queen for the summer series is going to be The Fisher King. There are some people out there that probably have never heard of that movie, and I'm pretty sure there's some that have that are probably at home going, oh, here we go. Alrighty. Well, alrighty. Dang, that's going to be an interesting episode when I come back. But if you want to catch up with me in between uploads before the next release, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen, where you can hit me up with some movie recommendations to put on the show. We can talk about the latest episode. I mean, you kind of gather this is what the show is about, so you know what our conversations are going to be about. And if you would like to see some funny movie stuff that I post up on TikTok, you can find me at the Mystical Space Witch. And if you would like to see my book series that I have written that is chock full of movie references, you can check out Inglorious Inc. American Dream Scheme Part 1 through 3 on Amazon. And it's also in the description box because I make life easy. It's what I believe in. Alrighty. Well, you all take care now. Don't forget to support your Ray Liotta movies. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!